Right, here we are, back with this Royal Enfield Matchless Model X. We're getting muddled with the Royal Enfield KX that I had here not long ago. Anyway, I've reassembled the gearbox completely, apart from the end cover, and I've also checked and made sure that we got all 4 gears, because it is a 4-speeder, 4 gears and neutral selecting. Everything turns freely and smoothly in all the gears. I've got the gearbox packed with grease because that is actually what these are supposed to have, and the lay shaft bush on the clutch side of the gearbox actually has an open end, so I doubt oil would stay in there for very long at all, although I'm going to top the grease that I shoveled in there up with a bit of gearbox oil just to sort of thin it down and loosen it up a little bit, make sure it gets to every nook and cranny in the gears and the shafts and the bushes. So anyway, we've got it all turning nice and freely, all the gears are selecting, but the biggest sort of issue is why? Because when I stripped this down, I strongly suspected that the tightening up was to do with the clutch area, because the clutch centre and basket weren't spinning very freely relative to each other. In fact, they were binding, and I thought, now that's probably what the cause of the problem is. But as soon as someone mentions gearbox trouble, and bearing in mind this machine is knocking on the door, well, it's certainly 90 odd years old, old enough, I thought it might be best to have a look inside the gearbox and just make sure everything's alright in there, and sure enough it was and is. But what I thought was, I only fitted the main shaft temporarily at this stage, and I thought what I would do is I would just use the gearbox as a mandrel to hold the main shaft while I fitted this clutch centre and tightened the nut. And I really thought that once I tightened the nut that it would start binding and tightening up, and that would confirm that the trouble was in that area. But I've got this main shaft nut done up tightly, and also the one around here on the other end of the main shaft is also done up tightly, and yet the whole lot is spinning freely. So I'm at a loss now as to know what was causing it, and I really want to know what the cause might have been. Now perhaps I've put the clutch centre on a different spline location to what it was last time, but I sort of noticed before I fitted the nut and the washer that the clutch centre boss overhung the end of the main shaft by, I don't know, perhaps a millimetre or so, and I thought, I know what's going to happen. When I tighten the nut up, it's going to force the clutch centre further along the main shaft, try to pull the main shaft through, and then that's when this lot will start binding. But it hasn't done that. So I'm going to take the main shaft out again, take this clutch centre off, and I'm actually going to try and get the bearing assembly out of this clutch basket. Although it's spinning freely and smoothly, I really doubt there's anything wrong at all. But it's the last link in the chain where I might find something amiss. But perhaps it was just a matter of this being located on a different spline rotationally previously, I don't know, or perhaps one of these clutch spring studs was dislocated, possibly causing some sort of obstruction. I don't know at this stage. It's puzzling me. I really wish that this had tightened up and started to bind when I tightened the clutch centre nut, but it really is as tight as it'll go, and there's no sign of any binding, so I'm scratching my head at this stage. But like I say, I'm going to pull it all apart again, go through it, and if I find anything, I'll no doubt update the situation.